coming to you live from the San Francisco Bay Area. It's time for Zig in the Zone with Ralph Zig Tycho.
All right, there you is.
I am back. You are comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man in Alameda, California. I'm Ralph Tycho. My friends sometimes call me Zig. They never call me late for dinner. And Paulie, how the hell are you, by the way?
Some of us don't even call you for dinner. Some of us just skip right through.
I could appreciate that.
You know, I'm just messing with you. I love that. Every time we break bread,
how about that?
We're cross talking. Every time we break bread, it's usually pizza crust.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this, Peter Golenbach. Do they have good pizza in Tampa Bay?
Absolutely, they do. They have more pizza places. They have more pizza places down here than they have churches, for crying out loud. It is a pizza paradise.
Ah, beautiful, beautiful. How are you, my friend?
Be better.
Good. And Paulie, you getting along too, huh?
Yeah, I'm doing well, buddy. I'm doing well. How's everything on your guys' side of the world?
This side of the bay. Paulie's in San Francisco. I'm in Alameda, which is in the East Bay. And we do this remotely at times. At times I come into the studio, Edge Studios in San Francisco. And Paulie, you're keeping the lights on. I'm proud of you.
I am the John Bodette of San Francisco. I'm keeping a light on for you, sir.
All right. As you know, Peter, we just kind of schmooze along on this show. And I wanted to start with something we haven't talked about off air, but it's the one thing that I'm most impressed with your career. And there's hundreds of things. How many bestsellers do you have, Peter?
I've had 10.
10 bestsellers.
10 New York Times bestsellers, yeah.
New York Times. I got a write-up in the Alameda Journal when my book came out. So I was happy with that. And I'm also proud, couldn't be more proud of the fact that you not only called it a brilliantly written book that I wrote with George Grimm, but you were nice enough to give us, you wrote the foreword for the book. So, belated thanks again. I've thanked you before. It'll be on the first page of my obituary, that your words. So, but let me tell you about how you impressed me the most with all of your works. And that was an interview, and it was her 102nd birthday recently. And I was reminded of an interview you gave to for Bums, the book you wrote. And first, I want to say that I've oftentimes said that was not only the best sports interview I've ever read, it was the best interview I ever read, bar none. So thank you for that. I want to know how it came.
First of all, you're talking about my interview with Rachel Robinson. That's what you're.
Oh, I didn't use her name. The hint was she was 102. God bless her soul, or God bless her. And yes, the interview you did with Rachel Robinson.
Interesting how that came about.
Yes. How did you meet her, and on what? How did it all happen?
She and I were born on the same day, July 19th. Interestingly enough, Rachel and I. But the reason that I was able to get that interview is that my uncle Justin Golenbach was Jackie's attorney.
Ooh.
So when I was 10 years old, this was 1956, Uncle Justin invited me to go to the World Series between the New York Yankees and the Brooklyn Dodgers. This was Game 4. This was the game before Don Larson's perfect game. And after the game was over, he went downstairs to talk to Jackie about something legal. Jackie was moving to Stamford, Connecticut, which is where I lived. And I think it had something to do with that. But I had the opportunity to meet Jackie. Here I was, 10 years old, and this, giant of a man who had set the baseball world on fire. It was a tremendous, tremendous opportunity, and one that I never, ever forgot, to the extent that when I wrote my senior thesis at college, I wrote it about Jackie. And, of course, I had written Dynasty. My very first book was an oral history of the New York Yankees. And the next team that I wanted to write about, the team that I did write about, was the Brooklyn Dodgers. So when it came time for me to call Rachel about doing an interview, I mean, she was always reluctant to give interviews. I don't think she had ever given one before that. But I was Justin's nephew. She said yes. And we talked for a good 2 hours, and she was absolutely enthralling, absolutely fantastic. And if you read
the interview reflects,
she was so open and honest and wonderful about her life with Jackie and how she managed to get from California, how she married him in the first place, and how they traveled from California to Florida for spring training. They ended up flying to New Orleans. And once they got to New Orleans, because they were black, they couldn't get on the plane. They kept taking their seats away and putting white people in their seats, to the point that Jackie decided, well, if I'm going to get to spring training, we better, find ourselves a bus and get ourselves from New Orleans over to Vero Beach, Florida. And sure enough, of course, they got on the bus. They're from California, so the racism wasn't so terrible. This was either 46 or 47. And they had to sit in the back of the bus with the other African Americans, some of whom had livestock back there. That was a situation where the two of them, dressed to the nines, just sat in the back of that bus all the way to spring training. It's just, such beautiful, so beautiful in the way that she told those stories. It was just so great to sit there and listen.
Something happened, Paul.
No, you're there. It's just that your mic was kind of giving out. So he was talking about the stories that he was hearing about Jackie Robinson.
Yeah, very fascinating. Next thing I want to talk to you about, Peter, because I don't get the opportunity as much as I certainly would enjoy and enjoyed doing for a 2 or 3 year period. You and I did a show on my podcast network, Comfortably Zoned, called Golenbach University. And if anybody wants to go to YouTube and just punch in Golenbach University, you will hear some wonderful insights. I feel like I got my PhD from Goldenbach University. So, but Goldenbach University is located in St. Pete, and it wouldn't be apropos not to have a ball club in St. Pete. You've been put through the same thing I have, me in Oakland, the uncertainty for years back and forth. It has really been hell on a baseball fan. Both of us in particular, and me more so, because my team initially, when I was a kid, 1 year, we're the same age, 1 year after 56, the Giants moved to San Francisco. And I didn't get to live here until 1966. So I'm embittered by that to start with, but this has been hell. Tell me about your situation in St. Pete.
Giants aren't going anywhere. It's the Oakland A's who are leaving. And, Giants, when the Giants left New York, the Yankees fans didn't care at all. And I would hope that when the Athletics leave, that the Giants fans don't care at all either, I would suspect.
Well, they don't understand how important, the Giants don't understand how important to baseball in the Bay Area is, or was, to have that rivalry. Both teams drew in 1989, both teams drew 3 million people.
Wow.
And that was before the new stadium was built. And it was, the A's were doing incredibly well at that time. Paulie, if you put up the number, the call-in number, Nancy Finley wants to speak with Peter. Nancy Finley loves us both. That's a great compliment.
All right, so let me put that on and let me see if I have it ready for you.
Yeah.
The studio hotline is open, 650-503-3435. The studio hotline is open, 650-503-3435. The studio hotline is open, 650-
I don't know how long that's been muted.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we've been muted for a minute.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we'll find out soon. But we're unmuted now, so that's a good thing.
All right.
But tell us about Baseball Heaven, and I'll take that book down. There you go.
All right. There it'd be. And this book was interviews that I've had over the years. You know, I did books on the Yankees dynasty and Brooklyn Dodgers, Bums, Boston Red Sox was Fenway, Chicago Cubs was Wrigleyville, and I did Amazing about the Mets. But I only used pieces of those interviews in those books. So I thought it would be interesting to take the full interviews, and I've put about 20 of them in Baseball Heaven, in this Baseball Heaven, and there's another 20 of them or so in this book, Whispers of the Gods. Whispers of the Gods came first. And, you know, the interviews with people like, you know, Jim Bouton and Stan Musial, Tom Sturdivant talking about Mickey Mantle, Jim Brosnan, who was with the Cubs, Ted Williams, of course. Ted Williams called me up one day. He goes, "Oh, why don't you come over here?" I said, "Sure, Ted. What can I do for you?" He says, "I want to tell you why Joe Jackson belongs in the Hall of Fame." So I got in my car, drove over to Ocala, and sat with Ted while he explained to me why Joe Jackson belongs in the Hall of Fame, and that's in Whispers of the Gods. Gene Conley, for my Red Sox book, told me why he almost one day flew to Jerusalem. He was famous for that.
With Pumpsy Green, am I correct?
With Pumpsy Green, right. Roy Campanella, of course, told me what it was like to be one of the first African Americans to come up and what he went through. My boy Roger Maris, here's old Roger. I don't know if you can see him.
Oh, yeah.
Here's old Roger. Yeah, Roger was somebody who was not going to give me an interview for my book Dynasty. And then after I left Gainesville, where they had a beer distributorship, because he had played his last 2 years with the Cardinals, where he had helped them win pennants in '67 and '68. His brother told me, no, he's not going to talk. My Cleet Boyer, and Cleet said to me, "Wait for me. I'll be in at 9 o'clock in the morning. Come sit at the bar. I'll be in." So I did. I came and I sat at the bar, drank coffee all day. Instead of coming at 9 a.m., he showed up at 9 p.m. The wait was absolutely worth it because he showed up with Roger Maris. Cleet was going to Japan the next day, and Roger was his best friend, and Roger was there to see him off. So Cleet brought Roger over to my table, and Roger knew what I wanted. And the problem, of course, is he said hi, I said hi, and then the quiet. You know, I didn't know what else to say to him because I didn't want to say, "Do you want to do an interview?" Because if he said no, it would sort of ruin the evening. But after about 2 minutes, he said to me, "Do you want to go outside and we can talk?" And I said, "Oh, you bet I do." And so I sat on the trunk of on the hood of somebody's car and interviewed Roger with my tape recorder. And Roger was absolutely as spectacular and terrific as he possibly could have been. Talking about he was a guy who had difficulties. He was a guy who really wanted people to leave him alone more than anything else. But it was hard to be left alone when you were beating Babe Ruth for the one-season home run title. So after every game or before every game, he's in summer comes along and he's got 30 home runs and 32 home runs and 34 home runs, and people are who think you can beat Babe Ruth's record. But there must have been, 15 different reporters, and all of them would ask him the same question. And after a while, the pressure on him was really, really great. And he talked about that, and it's fascinating. The end of the season, by the end of the season, his hair was falling out. That's how much pressure he was under. And of course, he did beat Babe Ruth's record. He hit 61 home runs in 1961. And the reporters just treated him terribly the next spring training. Really.
Ford Frick put an asterisk. It didn't take, but it was a mindset with people because it was a certain amount of games, 162 to 165, that the asterisk, which never got in a record book,
right,
it ruined the mindset of people.
Not a lot of people. Ruth had hit the 60 home runs in 154 games, and Roger, because of the expansion, had 162 games to do it, and he did it in the 162nd game. And so the commissioner, Ford Frick, who was a close friend of Ruth's, thought, well, maybe let's give him the asterisk so that Ruth would continue to have his record. But there was enough pushback against that he didn't do it. It wouldn't have been a stupid thing to do. It's like the people right now who want to ignore the wins that Roger Clemens has, or they want to ignore the home runs that Barry Bonds have. I mean, it's ridiculous. You don't want to put him in the Hall of Fame? Well, screw you. You don't want to put him in the Hall of Fame. But these two are the two best players of the last 50 years. The Hall of Fame is poorer for not having these two guys in the Hall of Fame.
And let me tell you about one of the best interviews I ever did was with a catcher named Bobby Estabella, whose grandfather was the famous song, Bob Estabella, right? Well, he played with Bobby Bonds, and he made the statement on my podcast that 80% of the players, and pitchers included, were juiced in the era that they both played in. So, right, but notwithstanding, people don't say, well, he was juiced, but he was coming against relief pitchers who were just as juiced as him. So, absolutely correct, and I've come full circle on that. He needs to be in, and you mentioned Shoeless Joe Jackson. Here's my Shoeless Joe glove. He needs to be in. He tutored Babe Ruth at one time or another in hitting. So you got to make it a museum again, not a cathedral. And just honor the players. If you want to put it on the plaque that they played in an era, blah, 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 so do it. But how could, and Pete Rose included, he was a retribute, he was a degenerate, but he hit 4,000 some odd hits. And Ty Cobb was the same way. They weren't perfect human beings. Am I correct?
This is the argument that I make. There was a man, he was the baseball commissioner. He became commissioner in 1920 as a result of the Black Sox scandal. And he was the commissioner until 1944. And the thing that he is remembered for the most is not allowing African Americans to play in the major leagues. Tell me his name.
I blank.
Kennesaw Mountain
Judge Landis. Judge Landis.
What is his name? Kennesaw Mountain Landis. And if you can put the guy who for 22 years refused to allow African Americans into the Hall of Fame, by God, you can put in Barry Bonds and you can put in Roger Clemens.
And you can take out Yorkie because Yorkie kept the aforementioned Pumpsy Green comes to mind, but he kept Willie Mays from playing in Boston.
Jackie Robinson tried out for the Red Sox before he tried out with the Dodgers.
Right.
And originally it was, I believe it was Joe Cronin. I think it was Cronin who he was very much against African Americans playing.
Yes.
You know, you want to read about Cronin in my book, Baseball Heaven. Eldon Walker. He played 1 year with the Boston Red Sox, and he was talking about Joe Cronin, who was the shortstop and the manager of the team. Walker had been a star pitcher for the Detroit Tigers before going over to the Boston Red Sox. And Eldon told me he would get on the mound, and Cronin at shortstop would tell the catcher what pitch to pitch. In other words, Eldon was not allowed to call his own pitches. Joe Cronin called the pitches, and it drove him absolutely stark raving mad, to the extent that at the end of the year, he went to the owner and said, "Get me the hell out of here." And they traded him to the St. Louis Browns, which at the time was not a very good team either.
At any time was not a very good team. But what can I tell you?
I know.
Peter, if you had to leave the media, podcasting, and the like, what would be your last words to baseball, to it all?
You'll have to run that by me again, because I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
I don't know what the hell I said, but I want some words of wisdom that we collectively could live with for the rest of our lives, from Peter Golenbach.
About baseball.
About whatever you think is pertinent.
Wow. Okay. Well, I would say that of all the games, that the game of baseball is the best of all the games. It teaches you teamwork. It teaches you kindness. It teaches you that if you work hard, you will get where you need to get. You sacrifice yourself and you will succeed. It teaches you the wonders of having to run 90 feet to beat out a throw from deep shortstop. You can sit and watch any baseball game. I don't care if it's a little league game, a high school game, or a professional game, and just be in awe at the skill that it takes to play that game. It's just fantastic. I have never gotten over it, and chances are I never will.
You never will. The awe is paramount to the awe that I feel when I talk to you, Peter. Thank you. And we didn't even talk about Forever Boys, the book that affected you the most in life because it caused you to get to Florida, and the book that I read and called you and wanted to talk about, as opposed to just wanting to talk about Dynasty and Bums, which would have been enough, but you understood that how I felt. What an incredible book that talked about when the jock comes off, or the things that people will do to keep the jock on. And say a few words about the Forever Boys.
Oh, you talking about the Forever Boys?
Yeah.
Well, in 1989, there was a league called the Senior Professional Baseball League. There were 8 teams in Florida, in various cities. West Palm Beach, St. Petersburg had one, Winter Haven had one, Fort Myers had one. And these were teams of former Major League Baseball players. And I was living in Connecticut, and I thought, well, what a wonderful opportunity to spend a season with these guys. And so it's funny. I went to the gathering, the first gathering of all the owners, and I was told, pick a team that you want to write about. And I picked the West Palm Beach Tropics. It had the owner was the owner of the Red Sox today. The manager was Dick Williams. The Mets slugger, Dave help me out here.
Parker.
Greatest home run hitter of the Mets. Anyhow,
Dave Kingman. Dave Kingman.
Kingman was there. There were just, terrific players on the West Palm Beach Tropics. So I shook hands with the owner of the Tropics, and I got a call the next day. We don't want you. You don't want me? Why? Well, the PR guy for the Tropics was a close friend of Jim Valvano's, and I had just written the book Personal Fouls, which got Jim Valvano fired as the athletic director and the coach of NC State basketball. So this guy was afraid that somehow I would, be a negative influence. So I called the fella who started the league, and I said, the West Palm Beach Tropics don't want me. What should I do? He says, well, I own the St. Petersburg Pelicans. Why don't you come and spend the season with the Pelicans? And sure enough, that's what I did. I was here one day. I remember the first night that I was here, crossing the Bayway across, and the Don Cesar, this pink hotel, was in the background, and the sun was going down, and it was 75 degrees. October 31st, 1989, and I just fell in love with the place. I said, "Oh my goodness, why don't I live here?" And
who could blame you? Who could blame you? If it weren't for the politics, I might have ended up in Florida as well. I live in a town that is much like St. Petersburg, surrounded by water. It's an island, and it's we have our respective paradises.
indeed.
So, yeah, nice. Come out and visit, Peter. We'd love to have you. We'd love to have you in the studio. Would that be great? After all this time, we could walk on the beach.
Okay, sounds like fun. Sounds like fun.
Paulie's going to get some information on the book. Ask your questions, Paul.
Well, yeah, I was asking, so where can we get Baseball Heaven up close and personal, what it was really like in the major leagues? How can we get that? Is that on Amazon, or where do we have that?
Amazon is where you go, since they seem to be closing bookstores left and right. So I would try Amazon. Not only Baseball Heaven, but my paperback Whispers of the Gods is out right now too. So
and hold that book up for me, because I didn't have the graphic for that. Hold up that book for me. And
There it is.
Here, hold on, keep it going because there we go. Whisper of the Gods, and you can get that on Amazon also.
You sure can. You certainly can. If you come over to the house, I'll autograph it for you.
There you go.
So
great.
we have two places to visit. Me to you and you to me. That'd be great. That'd be great. Thank you, everybody, for listening. It's Zig in the Zone. I'm Ralph Zig Tycho. And I just want to tell you that this program is the highlight of my week. So thanks for being here, Audii. And we'll catch you next week.
And don't forget, Zig says, please support the Head Start program in your neighborhood. Bring them some books. There's the website right there on your page. Remember, Zig says because it must be true. We'll see you guys next week in the zone. For myself and this guy. These guys are great. Thank you again, Peter, for joining us. Thank you, Zig. I am out of here.
My pleasure.
We'll see you guys
Thank you.
next week, guys.
Adios, Peter.